Today we're going to take a tour of the website of the National Archives of Ireland. This is the home page, and it's sort of a front end they've put onto their older site within the last few years. Lots of information. Today you can only visit the National Archives by appointment, but it tells you a lot about the types of records that they hold and about their reading room and how to search the catalog. I'm going to just jump right into genealogy, to their genealogy site. And again, it has a sort of a new front end to it. Lots of information here. They have research guides, explains various sources that they have, both online and off. And how to search their catalog. I'm going to begin by just sort of jumping into the 1901-1911 census, which is where we started last year. Now, it tells you a little bit about the census, and again, I would read all of this information before you sort of jump in and search. But to go to the search page, just click here for the census page. Another easy way to get there is just to type census.nationalarchives.ie and it'll take you right to this page. Now, again, it's got a lot of information about the censuses. Remember that the 1901 and 1911 censuses are the only complete censuses for Ireland. And again, you should read all of this information to understand exactly what's here. I'm going to jump, however, right into searching the census, and notice that it does default to the 1911 census. So if you want to search 1901 or another year, you need to begin there. Now, the 1821 to 1851 notations here would be for the fragments that have survived the fire. So if you're lucky enough to have your ancestors live in an area where there are fragments, you might be able to find them in one of those censuses. I'm just going to go to the 1901 census, and you can type in the information, the surname, the first name, the name of the county. When you get down here, be a little careful. It is an exact match. And so if you type something in with the wrong spelling, it's not going to find it. So, I'd be a little careful about using that unless you're really sure I've seen that information before. Remember that the censuses are kept by district electoral division, so you need to identify that component in order to be able to use it to search. But county is a good way to do that. Now, I'm going to just type in the Moody surname here because it is an unusual enough name that I'm not going to get a whole lot of results from that. And I'm not even going to bother with the counties because they only basically are in a couple of counties. And let's just search. And here's a list of all of the Moody's that are in the 1901 census. Now, I'm going to select Lucy here in Darogue in County Longford. And let's take a look. This is the information about her household. This is a transcript of the information. Notice that she has two sons and a daughter that are living with her. And yes, this is wrong. This should be James, not Janes, but James. And then she has three younger people, a Thomas Donnelly and then a William and Ellen Dunnigan, that are listed as nephews and nieces. Interesting, they're actually her grandchildren, which I know from having done that research. So this gives you the general information about who is in the household. They're residents of house number 5 in Darogue. The DED is Ballymahan, that's given right here, and the county is Longford. Now, coming down here, I can click on the household return and see the return for that particular family. Now, there is one page for every family. And in case you didn't know that, our 1890 census was done that way, the one that we lost. But both the 1911 and 1901 censuses in Ireland both have one page per family. So these were all of the people that were in the household on the 31st of March, 1901. The information was to be filled out by the head of the household, and you can see down here that Lucy made her mark, and so basically the constable was the one that filled out the form. So we have all of the information about the individuals, how they're related to the head of the household. We have their religion, whether they could read or write. Notice Lucy could read, but she couldn't write. Um, the sex, their occupation, she's listed as a farmer, and the farmer's son, her daughter is a housekeeper. And their marital status, she is a widow. None of the rest of the people in the household were married. And where they were born. And in this case, they were all born in County Longford. But sometimes that can give you a hint of where else to look for additional information. If, for example, they were born in a county other than the county that they appear in for the census. So this gives us all of the information about that family. And what I personally do is I would just make a copy of this page or download this page so that I had it and I can save it with my records. Now, that's not the only page that we get with the census. If we come down and look at the images, there are other census images both for 1901 and 1911. Remember that they're in house number 5, and so if we look at the enumerator's abstract, it will tell us all of the families. Here's house number 5. It's inhabited by one family in the household. There are 4 males, 3 females, for a total of 7 people in the household, and they're all Roman Catholic, as it appears that all of the people in this particular townland were. So that is just sort of an overview of the information for that particular locality. Now, when we go to the house and building return, again, we'll look at house number 5, and it tells us a little bit about the house. So, for example, the walls, number 1, were of stone. However, the roof was of a perishable material, so it got a 0. There were only 2 rooms in the house. Remember, there were 7 people living there, 2 rooms, and there were 2 windows in the front of the house, and that's important because that's how they were taxed. Add up all those numbers, and the house gets gets a 5, and that equates it to a third-class house. So again, looking down here, that would tell you a little bit about the social status of your ancestor. We have a lot of second class houses, and we have 1 first class house in this particular townland. And this is the name of the people that were in there in the townland. So here again, we have Lucy Moody right here at house number 5. Now again, going back, we can also look at the out offices and farmsteading return. Now this would be the buildings. An out office is simply a building that's on the land. So if we look here, and again look at house number 5, you can see that there's a stable and a coach house, a cow house, and a barn on the property. So there are 4 additional buildings on that property. Again, that might tell you that these people raise animals on their farm. They're not agricultural workers per se, because they do have a stable and a coach house, those types of things. So again, gives you a little bit of background on the family and what type of agricultural business that they're in. So do look at all of those and take care to make sure that you have copies of those so that you can keep that information in your files. Now we could also look at the same family in 1911. And again, there's Lucy. She's 90 years old now, and only 1 son living with her at this point. If we look at that, you can see that the two children, the Duncan children that were living with her, are now identified as a grandson and a granddaughter, as opposed to niece and nephew. And you've got all the same documents that you can look at. So that's a little bit about using the census on the National Archives website. So let's go back and take a look at some of the other information that's here. Let me just go back to the genealogy site. And again, look at the genealogy website. It's going to take you back to this same page, and it lists here all of the different online databases that are available on the website. So if I go here to the genealogy website, it will take me to, this is sort of the original site that was there. The others were just sort of new front ends to it, and it tells you back in 2016 they added a number of additional databases to the what was primarily the census website. And you can see these different databases down here that you can search. Now make sure you understand what these databases are, read about them, and in the blog that I wrote today, you'll see that I've also referenced you back to a number of other blogs that I've written on these. So for example, the Tithe Allotment books. The Tithe Allotment was a tax. Whoops, I got to the wrong one here. Sorry about that. You have to be careful of exactly where your mouse is. So it explains a little bit about the tithe allotments, and this was a tax that everyone had to pay that had agricultural produce. So if your ancestors were merchants, or a blacksmith or something like that, they would not be in the tithe allotment books. So you need to understand what's actually here and why you would or would not find your ancestors there. Now, like most records in Ireland, these are not complete, so that you may or may not find your ancestor in here. Also, depending upon the size of their property, again, another reason why they may or may not be here. But if you found your ancestors in Griffith's valuation, you'd want to go back and take a look and see if you can find them in the tithe allotments. Now, you can either search or you can browse. And one of the things that I suggest you do to start is actually browse through these records rather than to just search for a name. So for example, if I look at County Mayo, it gives me the names of all of the parishes. Now, one of the things that seems that I managed to go to Meath instead of Mayo. So again, it gives me the names of all of the parishes, and as I've used in examples in the past, Kilvine is the parish that my ancestors were in. And you can see that it is absolutely not complete. My ancestors were in the townland of Crumlin. And the townland that is in the tithe allotment books is the townland of Kilvine. So sometimes you can search, and especially if you have a common name and you're trying to figure out whether those are actually your ancestors, the area where my ancestors were from is actually not here. So again, check that and make sure that you are in a place where you're actually going to find records for your ancestors. Now, remember, Ireland did not split until 1922, but many of the records for the 6 counties that became Northern Ireland were sent to the Public Records Office. And so, for example, if I look at down here, make sure that you get your mouse right over top of it. You can see that there are only 2 two parishes in all of Down that are covered, one of which is Drumgoolin, and I actually do have ancestors there. I also have them in Anahilt. Anahilt is not here, but those records do exist in the Public Records Office of Northern Ireland. But if I look at Drumgoolin, now when I get down to the townland level, remember that these records were done before the names were standardized in the 1830s. So everything was transcribed exactly as it was. So the spellings may be a little bit off and you may have to check a couple of different areas. But Ballymcginty is where the ancestors were that I was looking for. Ballymcginty here. And I was looking for John King, and there he is right there on the front page. And so here is a copy of the tithe allotment for that area, which shows me John King, and it tells me about the land that he has and the quality. Is it first quality or second quality land, the total, and then what the tithe is that he needs to pay to the rector of the Church of Ireland is where the money actually goes. So as a Roman Catholic, as you can imagine, our ancestors weren't really very happy about this particular tax. And it was discontinued in the late 1830s, and that's when Griffith's valuation was done to create one tax for everything rather than having these individual taxes. So that's the tithe allotment books. Now, another thing that's here are the calendars of wills and the will registers, also the prerogative and diocesan wills. So one of the things that you need to know about wills is that all of the original copies up till about 1900 were destroyed in the fire at the Public Records Office. There are indexes, and the calendars of wills are exactly that. They are just basically an index with a brief abstract of what it contains. So again, you can go in here and learn about the wills, and you can actually search. This goes to 1920. Now, if you're in Ireland, you can get a copy of that will from the National Archives. They actually have to send down to the courts for the four courts for a copy, so you order it one day and it's there the next. But they are in the process of imaging many of those records. And the same with the will registers. Now, one of the things about the will registers is that they were, again, the originals were destroyed, but the register copies in some of the registers after 1858, when they became civil records, do survive in the local offices. And so they've been able to get copies, not the originals, but the transcribed copies into the will books. So for example, if I come in here and search for Moody, again, we'll just keep using that unusual name, and search here, you can see that there is a will register for Maria Moody from 1897. Now, this was in Westmeath, and so it was in one of the registries outside of Dublin. Dublin is the primary registry, and nothing survives for the primary registry. So if the will was probated in one of the district registries, you may have a chance of finding the information. And in this case, I can actually go here and they have images of the actual will. So I can go through here and read this. So that's sort of a little bit about the wills. Let's see what else we have here that we might want to look at. Soldiers' wills, again, this is from World War I. If you had somebody that served in World War I, you might want to check that. The shipping and crew lists, again, if you had somebody that was crew on a ship sailing out of one of the ports in Ireland, you probably want to check that. Back in 2016, they brought online the Valuation Office House Books. And so, again, read through this. These were the books that were created both prior to Griffith's valuation and into the early valuations, that the field valuators took out with them where they made their notes. Again, not all of them survive, and in many cases, the where you'll find names, the books were valuing when the early valuators went out, they were valuing the land and not the individuals. Mentioning the individuals that were on that land, unless they had a house that was valued at more than £3 up until 1836 and £5 after that. And so most of our ancestors were not in that category. So, unless you had somebody that was fairly well off, you're probably not going to find their names in these books. But you can go in and search these books for information about the area. And you can search all of them at the same time, or you can search a specific book. So if I want to look for dailies and I'm looking in the county of Mayo, and the parish of Kilvine, there is a John Daly there. Unfortunately, he's in Ballinvilla, which is not where mine was. That's not my John Daly. But if I go in and look here, he did have a house that was valued. These are all of the buildings that were on his property. And so he is listed here, although it's not mine. So again, it's sort of limited as to what you're going to find here. Hopefully in the future they'll collect a few more of these books. These books have been sort of separated in a number of different repositories, and they've been trying to collect them in one place and get them imaged. So that's a tour of the site for the National Archives of Ireland, and I hope you'll take a look at it and find some information, especially the census records. If your ancestors left before the 1901 census, I would still look for someone of the same surname that's living in the same area, because it's unlikely that everybody in the family emigrated. So you may still be able to find somebody living there, and then by using the civil registration and the church records, move both backwards and forwards in terms of trying to pull together that family and find out more about it.